Hi, folks. This is lesson 11.4 Treating Infectious Diseases. We've been looking a lot through this chapter and in previous chapters as well as at what things will cause diseases, ways we can try to lower our risk of being exposed to those diseases. But the reality is, as much as we will try to be careful and do the best we can, everybody catches something sometimes. And usually those are very common and easily managed diseases. But at the same time, just because there is so much misinformation about some of these diseases, even the simple ones, this can actually lead to more harm than good. So, what we need to do is make sure that we know how to treat these common diseases and make sure that people can get better safely. So, first thing we're going to talk about is the common cold. And sometimes, you'll hear sort of the old joke of, oh, why can't they just find a cure for the common cold? Well, they can't. It's not something like, oh, we'll just get better at it someday. It's that colds are caused by viruses, and there's actually thousands of different viruses that cause colds. So you'd have to be getting vaccinations for thousands of different viruses. There's not really any practical way to make a vaccine that would be able to do that. And you add on top of that that all of those viruses are constantly going through changes. They're mutating so that even if we made some sort of crazy insane virus that would protect you against every virus that causes colds today, within a few weeks it would be essentially worthless again. So instead, what we have to look at are ways that we can treat your symptoms while you have a cold so that hopefully things don't get too serious for you and just let your body have a natural chance to build up its own immunity, fight off that particular cold virus, and get you healthy again. So, the most common thing we do is we go to a pharmacy and we pick up some cold medication. Now, the important thing to do is to make sure that if you're going there yourself, or if you've asked somebody to go there for you, that you have a really clear idea of exactly what symptoms you have. Sometimes people say, well, why don't I just buy the medicine that has like all of the symptoms? It takes care of everything. That doesn't actually mean that it's doing anything better for you. In fact, let's say you picked up a cold medication that had decongestants in it when all you have is like a tickle in your throat that's causing a dry cough. Those decongestants are actually bad because your body naturally wants to build up mucus in order to get rid of some of the pathogens. And add on to that, that if you take decongestants for more than a few days, they actually cause the opposite effect and would cause you to get more stuffed up. So that's why we got to make sure that we're really zeroing in on specifically the condition that you have and the symptoms that you have. Now, the other thing is sometimes somebody will get a little bit of a cold and they'll instantly want to go see a doctor. Now, what we really got to look at is that's putting a lot of pressure on our medical system for an unnecessary reason. That's not to say that a cold can't get to be a problem. For example, if your blood oxygen levels start to drop, and you might feel this from feeling kind of dizzy, or your vision gets kind of blurry, or you have sort of a almost like a dark tunnel effect to your vision, or you might actually have a device at home or on your watch that lets you measure your oxygen levels. If those levels start dropping down into the low 90s or especially into the 80s, then it's probably not even just a good idea to see your doctor. It's time to get into an ER because that means something serious is going on. But if your cold has lasted more than about 10 days to 2 weeks, then that means that, yeah, it probably is something that needs to be looked at by a doctor. You probably have some sort of even secondary infection that's going on. But if not, all your doctor's honestly going to do is tell you the obvious. Go home, get lots of rest, get lots of fluids, and just let your body naturally take care of it. Now, the other problem that we have is that as soon as people get sick, they say, well, doctor has to give me some sort of magic pill that makes me instantly better. That's where we, for a long period of time, decades, have gotten into the habit of pressuring doctors into giving antibiotics to us for any disease we have. Why is that dangerous? Well, we're even going to cover this a little bit more later on in this presentation. But what we have to consider is that antibiotics are only for bacteria. If you have something that's caused by a virus, like a regular cold, taking antibiotics isn't doing anything for that. Zero, zilch. Viruses are not affected by antibiotics. So that's not something that's going to be a good idea. Later on, we'll get into a little bit more detail of exactly why this is actually dangerous, not just useless, but dangerous to take antibiotics for those reasons. Now, when it comes to those over-the-counter drugs, sometimes people have the idea that because anybody can just walk into a pharmacy and buy these, they must be really safe. Or if I want to take more of them to get better faster, I'll just do that. This is not the right way to approach these drugs. Just because something is available without a prescription doesn't mean that you can't be completely ignoring what's on the label. There's still concerns that we have to have. One of the biggest ones is side effects, especially if you're taking that medication with some other medication or alcohol, because a lot of times even over-the-counter non-prescription drugs will have serious reactions with other medications or alcohol. That's why you should always be making sure that you read the label before you take anything, even if it's just to check things like the expiry date to make sure it's not way out of date. There are some really standard rules that we have to go by, and one that might apply to you is that anybody under the age of 16 should never take anything with aspirin. Its full name is acetylsalicylic acid. That can give you, if you have flu-like symptoms, it can actually cause a reaction in your body that leads to a very serious disease called Reye's syndrome, which can actually endanger your life. So even if you're just right around that 16 years of age thing, a doctor usually would tell you to avoid anything with acetylsalicylic acid. Only take the dosage that's listed on the packaging. And that's because even though some people think, well, if 2 pills are good, then I should just take 4 to feel better really fast. That's not the case. A lot of medications can actually harm your body if you take those higher doses. They might harm your liver, they might harm part of your digestive tract. There's all sorts of things they could do. And certainly there is no sort of relationship between just taking more makes you feel better faster. That's not great at all. Now, if you do have any questions about anything that you're planning to take, whether it's prescriptions or non-prescription medications, just ask a pharmacist. Go into any pharmacy, ask to speak to the pharmacist, and they'll talk to you about what you have to be concerned about. This is especially a good idea if you regularly go to one pharmacy, which is kind of the best idea, because then they'll have a list of all the medications you're on, and they can quickly look things up for you. If that's not something you can do, maybe it's late at night or something like that, look on the package of the medication. There's always going to be a 1-800 number on there that you can call. And that's because the companies that make these medications, they never want to have a situation where somebody does something dangerous with them, and then it comes out in the news, hey, somebody got harmed by their product. So call that 1-800 number. If you can't find that quickly or easily, dial 811. So it's not 911, which is for emergencies like getting ambulances and stuff. It's one step below that. 811, they're the people where they have registered nurses on call, and you can ask them about whatever you need to know about. Now, antibiotics, which I briefly mentioned before, were actually discovered completely by accident by a guy named Alexander Fleming in 1929. He was doing some experiments with bacteria and noticed that some mold that was growing on a petri dish prevented the bacteria from continuing to grow. This is where the original first antibiotic, penicillin, comes from. Today, we make other antibiotics from other molds. We also sometimes have found that certain fungi are good at this as well. And surprisingly, even other bacteria. Because remember, there's some bacteria that are actually good for us. And if we can actually find a bacteria that grows faster, better than the harmful bacteria, it actually kind of dominates the growth and prevents the bad bacteria from getting a foothold. Now, all of these antibiotics used in different ways, different dosages, different types for different conditions you might have, are great for fighting diseases caused by bacteria. The problem is that, as I said before, they're not going to help things that are caused by a virus. Instead, we might actually be causing you to get sicker by giving you a an antibiotic in that situation. The only reason why a doctor should give antibiotics is because they might think that because you were run down from some sort of viral infection, that it's caused a secondary infection from a bacteria, maybe bacterial pneumonia or something like that. But that's something different that a doctor has to look at very carefully, and we'll probably do some testing on you first to make sure that it is a bacteria-related infection. So, what are some of the problems if we do start to overprescribe antibiotics? Well, simply, most straightforward thing for you is the antibiotics will also kill the good bacteria in your body, the ones that, for example, help you with digestion, the ones that actually my body has a lot of problems with because I have ulcerative colitis. But for you, a healthy person, putting those antibiotics into your system can kill off that good bacteria in your colon, and then you might start getting stomach cramps or diarrhea, and then you start becoming dehydrated exactly when you need to be hydrated. Also, antibiotics can definitely cause side effects, including allergic reactions. So, if you're on a new antibiotic for the first time, it's probably a good idea to make sure that you're taking it when there's other people around so you can get help if you start to have an allergic reaction. But if you notice anything, like you're having trouble breathing or a rash or something else feels kind of weird, that's when you contact a doctor immediately or get yourself into an ER. The other big concern we have for the entire population is that if we start taking antibiotics all the time, and maybe we don't take them to finish off the full dosage or something like that, we can actually create what are called superbugs. Those are drug-resistant bacteria because antibiotics will always kill the weakest bacteria first. If there's other bacteria that could still make you sick and you've stopped taking your antibiotics because you say, oh, well, I feel better already. Nope, that's exactly the worst thing to do because then those stronger bacteria that are still surviving will still be there and you're just going to get sick again and even possibly spread that on to other people. There's actually one particular bacteria that causes a disease that is very serious, especially in hospitals where it can spread from sick people to sick people over and over again because their immune systems are already having problems. It's called C. difficile. And it causes some severe infections and inflammation in your large intestine. So that causes diarrhea, which can make you dehydrated. It can also cause life-threatening damage to the colon. Basically, this is a horrible thing because somebody might already be in the hospital fighting off something else, and they get C. difficile, and now they have to try to fight that off as well. And the reason it's C. difficile is because it has proven to be so resistant to so many antibiotics that we normally use that they have to use crazy, insane, super strong ones that might actually harm that person that is dealing with other diseases at the same time. That's the end for this section. Make sure that you've got everything filled in for this section and that you answer any questions in the backline pages of your notebook. Have a good day.